Welcome back, guys. We are back for probably the best scene I think I can talk about within horror. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a pretty important scene, and if you've seen the film, you know what I'm going to talk about. But if you haven't, huge spoiler warning on this film. Please don't watch this video unless you've seen this scene, because it will ruin the whole film for you, and it's one of those things that you can only experience once. This scene definitely traumatized a lot of people and is very polarizing, and I think that this will serve as a great platform for us to all get out our feelings. So if you haven't seen the film, I recommend go checking it out and coming back here because you really want to discuss what happened afterwards. Again, guys, if you haven't seen this film, please go watch the film first in its entirety and then come back here, because this scene has been stated as one of the ballsiest moves in cinematic history. I don't want to ruin that for you. And don't forget to hang around until the end of this video, because I have a very special guest who wants to discuss the traumatizing scene that affected them. And it's a collab that you guys have been waiting for a while, so you want to hang around for a double dose of horror. So let's talk about that scene. The Mist is a 2007 horror sci-fi film based on the 1980s Stephen King novel of the same name. The film was directed and adapted to screen by Frank Darabont, who directed The Green Mile, Shawshank Redemption, and The Majestic. Darabont was eager to adapt the novel to film ever since it was released in the 80s. The plot surrounds a group of citizens that are fighting for their lives after being barricaded in a supermarket as a freak storm unleashes bloodthirsty creatures on their small town. This movie is all about the characters and their true colors showing, and what they will do under exceptional circumstances. Stephen King has said that he was genuinely frightened by this adaptation, and upon hearing this, Darabont said it was the happiest moment of his career. Again, I'm gonna say this one more time, guys. If you haven't seen the film, please see it. I don't know if you know this, but Stephen King himself has also said that anyone who spoils the ending of this film, the last 5 minutes, should be hanged. So please, I don't want Stephen King to hate me, and I'm here to discuss this scene because it's so amazing, and I think that's okay, but please don't get me in trouble with the King himself, guys. As you've probably guessed, this is the last scene in the film, and so far we have seen several characters battle their way through trying to survive as these killer creatures kill off people one by one. And maybe even worse than that, the group has split off and people have turned against each other out of fear. What you need to know is that this was their only chance of escaping, and only 5 of them made it out. David, his son Billy, school teacher Amanda, and elderly survivors Dan and Irene. Finally, they're in a vehicle plowing through the mist trying to find some hope, but all they have witnessed is the destruction of everything and everyone they loved. And soon, the fuel tank shows empty. "We gave it a good shot. Nobody can say that we didn't," says Dan in the back seat. "Nope, nobody can say that," Irene responds. The sound of the creatures shriek in the background. The characters stare at each other in a shallow depth of field, hearing their fate grow closer. The mist surrounds them like a sheet of snow, and the silence is deafening. David pulls a gun into shot. Amanda looks at him curiously, but knowing his solution. David looks around slowly to reveal Dan nodding in agreement in the back seat. A creature's faint roar is heard in the background. The 4 adults stare into the middle of the car. There is nothing left to say and only one thing left to do. David unloads the gun and counts the bullets, removing the empty shells. "Well, we got, 4 bullets. But there's 5 of us," Amanda states. David loads the gun and replies, "I'll figure something out." A monster shrieks in the distance. A shot of Billy asleep against the window is seen as the gun is loaded out of focus in the foreground. Deafening silence seems to echo through the car as the camera shakenly pans from Dan to Irene as they sit in the back seat, lost for words. The camera stops at Amanda. She is shaking with fear, in the front seat, crying silently. Her lips tremble. Her muffled cries wake Billy, who looks around. Cut to an exterior shot showing the car surrounded by the mist. 4 gunshots are heard as they illuminate the interior of the car. David lets out a primal scream. We're back in the car with him as he screams, holding onto the gun with blood splattered across his face. Dan's body can be seen in the background. David screams in frustration. He is broken and traumatized. The camera jerks to show his anger. He moves the barrel into his mouth, clicking through the empty rounds. Throwing the gun at the ground, he breathes deeply and pushes the door open. We switch to an exterior view as David shouts, "Come on! Come on!" shaking the car, asking to be taken. Amanda's body is seen leaning against the opposite window, drenched in blood. David continues to whisper out of breath, and the sound of the monster echoes around him. He breathes heavily, staring out into the mist. He continues to yell again, "Come on! Come on! Come on!" More noises are heard, but this time they are paired with music. His face changes. An army tank rolls out of the mist in slow motion. Men in camouflage are seen all around. Cars roll by with survivors. They're staring at David in the eyes. People with flamethrowers and masks storm the area. David falls to his knees in slow motion. He screams in agony as two men walk to his aid. We pan up to see help was on its way. Fade to black. I mean, are there even words? This video is already demonetized, I know that, and watching this scene back for this video, every time, even just saying what happens, I get goosebumps. Like, can you see I'm like tearing up? This is such an emotional, ruining scene. This ending was completely polarizing for audiences, and they either loved it or hated it. There's a great article that I'll link down below from medium.com that explains the 12 steps of a hero's journey in a story, and how in this movie the hero failed during that final step, so he was doomed, and therefore the audience feels the doom and gloom and it consumes them. I think this is a very extreme example of the doom ending in a horror movie, and because help was on its way the whole time, but it has been done before, and usually when it is done there's multiple endings. We see this in things like Get Out or like The Butterfly Effect, which I guess it's not horror, but it's the same thing, such a dooming ending, although that was chosen. So it's a little bit different, and with Get Out, I don't know if you guys know, but there is multiple endings to that film. One is one we all applauded in the cinema, the other one, very dark. But again, I find the ending in The Mist was very horrifying because of the way it takes place. It's so final and brutal and just really brave. Even Stephen King couldn't write such a damning ending. In the book, it ends more ambiguous, with the people getting in the car and kind of driving off, and it's left very open. And Darabont was the one who wrote in those 5 final minutes that were just so chilling. The film breaks all the simple horror rules and then goes on to break the big ones. And I think this leaves the audience feeling really hurt and misled. And in turn, as we see a lot in films, because people didn't like the circumstances of the last scene and of the ending, they decide they hate the film. Those negative feelings towards that scene, which, I mean, it's awful to watch. A lot of people translated into not liking the film because it was just so awful to watch. But I don't know, you and me, I guess we kind of like films that challenge us in that way. And in a second, I'll tell you why Stephen King agrees with us. Darabont was offered $30 million to make this film under the condition that he cut out that last scene. But Darabont was convinced that the ending he envisioned belonged in the film, and he took a separate deal in which he would have to make the film for half the money, forfeiting his directing salary. And although the ending completely ruined the film for some theatergoers, Stephen King himself was very impressed, saying that he loved it and he wished he had thought of it himself. And although it was a frightening scene, people who go to a horror movie don't necessarily want to be sent out with a Pollyanna ending. Looks like Stephen King had fans like you and me in mind. In my opinion, the ending for The Mist serves a higher purpose And instead of the story just being about people and how they react in these kind of situations and survival, it turns into a story about our bleak existence. Because in real life, the hero isn't perfect and the answers aren't always clear. And for a monster sci-fi horror film, it brings in the element of disturbing realism. Personally, I love this film and I love the ending. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you love this ending? Did it ruin the film for you? Did it make the film for you? What did you think when you watched it? Where were you when you watched it? Who did you watch it with? I want to know it all down below. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and why not share it with a friend? And please stay tuned, because right now I have a very special guest that I'm very excited to have on my channel, talking about a scene that really affected her in horror. Surprise! It's Sarah Hogginson!
So firstly, I just want to thank Emma for inviting me onto her channel to talk about the scene that has affected me most. In case you don't know me or don't know who I am, my name is Sarah and I run the channel Possessed by Horror, where I do mostly horror movie reviews. I do some react videos here and there, and soon enough I will be incorporating more true crime content. So when Emma originally asked me to talk about a scene that has affected me a lot, I immediately thought of the movie Dead End with Lynn Shay and Ray Wise. Now I actually have a lot of anxiety currently in that I'm about to talk about it, because it's something that I can't really talk about. I almost immediately regretted agreeing to do this movie specifically. I should have picked something else, because just talking about it really unsettles me and makes me squirm, and it's just so uncomfortable. So if you've seen the movie, you might know what scene I'm talking about. If you haven't seen the movie, it is kind of a spoiler for the film. So now, I have not rewatched this movie for the sake of this video, and I have no intention of doing that. So if the details are a little rusty, I apologize. I won't ever watch this movie again. However, I did enjoy it as a film, minus this scene. I just can't bear witness to the scene ever again, so I just can't rewatch it. I'm sorry. I hope that's okay for this video. I'm gonna try my best to remember a few details. I'm not gonna go into extreme detail though. So the scene is I can't even talk about it, oh my god. Lynn Shay plays a woman named Laura, and it's basically, the whole movie's kind of like a road trip from hell. It's based around Christmas Eve, I believe, and some things happen on this little road trip, right? So Laura ends up getting a head injury, and she is like confronted by her husband, and you know, he's like, oh, you hurt your head or something. I can't, sorry, like I said, it's a little rusty. She goes to feel her head and check on her wound and realizes that her brain is exposed. Now she realizes that there is some pleasure involved in her feeling her brain, so she continues to rub her brain as she recollects this affair that she had with her husband's friend. Of course, it is sexual in nature, and ultimately it ends up killing her because she's rubbing her brain too hard. Now obviously that doesn't really paint the picture as clearly as this scene, as disturbing as this scene really is. So if you want to watch that, by all means watch the scene. I never will again, because I'm really traumatized. It's been a year since I've seen it, and it still, to this day, pops up in my head every once in a while. And I've even met Lynn Shay in person, and let me tell you, that image still in my brain. Like I said, I still enjoyed the movie as a whole. It's definitely my kind of film. It was released in 2003, so it's got those like early 2000s vibes, but yeah, it's a pass from here on out. Thank you again to Emma for letting me be on your channel, and I hope to see you on my channel very soon.